Welcome to another episode of Storytelling in the Tropics. My name is Allison Harrison. Today's guest is Lisa Rooms. Lisa Rooms is a playwright, an author, and recently acquired her own brand of wines. She is a trained attorney, and she can add all the other things that I've forgotten. And she's not 40, just to let you know. Welcome,
Not yet.
Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, Lisa. So I've known you for a number of years.
Yes.
And I'm very interested in finding out more about your story. And I think that the rest of the world would appreciate a story like yours, especially from Jamaica. So let's start from where you're from.
I was born in St Andrew, Jamaica, in 1990, so 31 there roughly. So now I'm telling everyone my age.
And the house that we're in now, this has been in the house that you grew up in?
Yes, so I have lived in this house my entire life.
Wow.
My entire life, yeah.
Wow. History. All right. So talk to me about high school. What are some of the most memorable moments of high school? And of course, you're going to tell me which high school you went to.
So I went to the St Andrew High School for Girls. The best girls' school in Jamaica, obviously.
Immaculate.
No, generally the best school in Jamaica. Not Immaculate, the St Andrew High School for Girls.
Yes.
And I was there first form straight through to sixth form. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I met most of my friends who are still my friends there. One particular situation I can remember in high school, which I absolutely loved, was when we were in sixth form, we had this competition called Lip Sync. Mm-hmm. And it's a competition basically where you get a dub and you lip sync at a concert that people pay to come to. I remember being mortified of having to be a dancer in a song called, I don't know if you remember Summer Body,
Yes.
I think Bling Dog.
Yes.
And I was absolutely mortified that I had to do the dance in that song. And it was a wonderful experience because I was doing it with my friends, but it was one of those things that really stick out in my mind.
Right.
Because I remember being, oh my gosh, why have I let them convince me to do this?
Right.
But I loved high school. You know, I'm still friends with a lot of people from high school. It was a very wonderful experience.
University?
Yes. So I started UE doing actually sociology. And then I switched into law after the first year. And met great people there too. So I did law there. Most of my friends from from UE are still my friends as well. Mm-hmm. And then after UE, I went to Norman Manley, which is kind of the certification part of the law program.
Why law? Why did you choose law?
You know what? That's a very funny question, and sometimes I don't fully know the answer to it.
To this day?
To this day, I don't fully know the answer to it. So there are parts of law that I really love. So when I was at the Faculty of Law, there was a teacher I had called Natalie Cortese, mm-hmm. and she taught IP and loved IP. She made me love it. To this day, I love it because of her. And recently I interacted with her again because she's actually also an author. Mm-hmm. So I love that also about her. So right. It was a really kind of good experience with her. Going into law, I think it was more something kind of like, your parents kind of push you into things.
There's like...
So, there's like an adage, lawyer, doctor, Indian chief.
Yes.
So it was kind of like, don't really want to be a doctor, very bad at science. Let's see where this law thing can go. Right. So I got into that, and I mean, I do love it. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a good switch.
Okay. And your specialty is IP?
Yes. So I have a particular focus in IP. So I actually did my master's as well in IP in London.
Intellectual property.
Intellectual property for
for
those who may not know.
Right.
So I actually did my master's as well in it, and I practice it now, and practice it while I was working with a firm.
So, in this age, the social media age, the digital age, IP is extremely, extremely, extremely
definitely.
important. So
Yes.
how for just to kind of digress for a little bit, but the issue of IP, especially with creatives,
Yes.
where like obviously if you have a question about IP, please reach out to Lisa. But what are some of the basic things that creatives or anybody who creates any body of work would need to know about their intellectual property? Because everybody's like, a lot of people are like, put it out on social media.
Right.
And, which is fine, but somebody might be there to take it and do
Right.
something else with it,
Right. So my first point is always that when you create something, you have to be cognizant of the protection that you want. So people create works for themselves, and people create works to share with people. And the truth of the fact is that, most times when you create something, there is some value in it, which is not just a value of feeling good about it, but there's also sometimes a monetary value to it. So I always, always stress that if you create something, you need to look at it and try to protect it. So even this year, I've done multiple workshops in trying to get creatives to understand the IP rights and how you go about protecting it. So, for example, copyright. Copyright is something in Jamaica where as soon as you create the work, there's copyright in it. It has to fall under the categories of protected works, literary, dramatic, artistic, musical, and some other categories. Right. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you create one of those works, you have copyright in it. Mm-hmm. But the way that you sort of prove to the world that this is your work is by registration. Mm-hmm. Same thing with trademark. You register the trademark and everyone knows that it's yours. Right. So that gives you a sort of added protection. And I always stress that, you can then use this proof that you are the owner to get some benefit from it, because you can give people licenses, you can assign your work to people. So there is so much that you can get out of it that I'm always stressing. You have created this work, you are sitting down on it, you're not getting anything out of it. Do something with it, but make sure that when you're doing something with it, you have that protection of registration that says that this work is yours.
Okay. And registration starts at the Intellectual Property Office at JIPO?
Right, so JIPO. So JIPO will register your copyright, JIPO will register your trademarks. If you've created an invention, JIPO will register that as well. So, and they're usually really very helpful in kind of like talking you through it.
So let's get back to who Lisa is now.
Yes.
Okay, so you are an IP attorney and you are a screenwriter, a playwright, author. Please explain, like, that's a lot. And to be able to put out that kind of, in that level of work over short periods of time, in my opinion, how, first of all, tell me about the first work, well, I know you have a bunch of screenplays, but your first book.
Right. So my first book that I actually published. So I love writing. It is one of my deepest passions. I've been writing since I was in high school, in university. My friend Stephanie will tell you about this story that I wrote when we were in business law class in first year of UE. Which I haven't really done anything with, but I really should, because it was one of the first stories that I ever sort of came up with. It was a short story about a king with a very fussy daughter. And it's like she wanted him to make her a special coat. And he ordered the murder of, all these chinchillas to make this coat. And my friend was just like, you're an insane person.
Number one.
But I love it. And I was just like, yes, I love it too. But the first book that I have actually published is called The Time Traps Captive. And it's essentially a kind of fantasy, kind of historic fiction, kind of all sort of blended, time travel in there,
Right.
magic, and it's kind of the first story that I felt so deeply passionate about sharing fully that I had to write it and I had to put it out. And it's basically a story about a woman who gets caught in a curse, essentially.
Right.
So she's traveling through time, different periods in time, different periods in history. She meets different characters, historic characters. And so she kind of meets these people, and I've literally inserted her into these famous historic characters' lives.
Okay. Okay.
To just kind of sort of take my favorite periods in history and kind of put her in there. And she's essentially trying to find how does she break this cycle, because she dies and she's reborn. How does she break the curse?
Okay.
So that's essentially how that story is.
From our conversations, it seems like you have a particular style, a particular aesthetic in your writing. It's very different centuries ago.
Yes.
England. Is it specifically England?
No, so actually the Time Traps Captive goes through a bunch of countries. So it actually starts in France. And there's a point in time where she's in Port Royal, Jamaica. There's a point in time where she's in London with the Bronte sisters. There's a point in time where she is in the United States with Al Capone. There's a point in time where she's in Guyana in Jonestown,
Right,
with Jim Jones.
yes.
It's just me kind of picking what I love and putting her in those situations.
That's interesting. So how do you do your research for your writing when you have a particular, like your first novel? What was the research behind that?
Right. So that was actually the longest part of the process, was picking the era, the times, and then actually doing a very deep delve into the characters that I wanted to pick, the situations I wanted to put her in. And so it had a lot of library research, internet research, book research. So it was a lot. And that was, I think, the longest part of the process. Because once I got the timelines down and I got the different characters down and the situations that I wanted to put her in, I just, spent a couple of weeks. It was basically every day, every whole day, Sunday, for about 2 months. Writing that.
Wow. How long did it take you to write that?
So that one took me about 2 months.
From research to finish?
From research to finish.
That just sounds like a very short period of time for how many pages? 300 pages?
Yeah, so this one's about 300 pages.
And it just pours out of you?
It does.
The dialogue, everything?
Yeah, so for this one, because when you're really passionate about something, it just kind of like works, and it just kind of, it just feels good to like sit down. So literally I said it's a whole day on Sunday. So I'd start in the morning and like Sunday evening, I'm still writing. So when you kind of get that drive to do it because you are passionate about, getting it out for people to see, it just kind of comes.
So that's the first one. There are others.
Yes, there are others.
Yes.
So I write under my pen name, actually, because I try to separate legal writing from fictional writing. So I write under my pen name, Elizabeth Churchill. So there's actually one other book that is out now also, which is called The Surprising Road to Love. And that is a complete diversion from the kind of historic fiction. This one is very campy teen romance. It's about a girl who, it has a little history element. It's about a girl who goes with her mother to help her mother. Her grandma's moving in with them. So they're trying to clear out her grandma's house. She stumbles across a box of old letters, which is her great-great-great-grandfather's letters to her great-great-great-grandmother. And while she's kind of like figuring out their story through reading the letters, she kind of has her own kind of romance coming through as well. And this one is actually a novella. So this one's probably about 100 pages. And it's meant to be a 3-part series. So the first book, it's called the Road series. So it's a surprise. The first book is called The Surprising Road to Love. The series is called the Road series. And so this first one is basically her finding her own kind of love story as she's reading about her, family's story.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this one's about 100 pages. The second book in this series is also done and will be available very soon. And it's a continuation. So it's book 2. This one is called The Hardest Road to Travel.
Hardest Road to Travel.
The Hardest Road to Travel. They're all road.
Yeah, some road thing.
Road themed.
Right.
So this one's a little bit about her and her newfound love and some struggles along the way.
Okay.
With family and with them and just them kind of seeing how best they can figure out their struggles together.
And the first one in the series, in
Yes.
the Road series, is already published and
It's already
available.
published and available, yes.
The second one isn't.
The second one isn't.
Okay. And there's going to be 3.
There's going to be a third one, which will finish off the series, which I am aiming for next year.
Okay. So help me with your time management. How do you manage your time around these books?
So the first book that I wrote, that was a series of Sundays. The first book in this series, also a kind of series of Sundays. The second one actually also a series of Sundays. So that's kind of how I've had to manage
Sundays.
So I've had to manage that. But I've been very blessed that now I'm doing some more writing and I'm a little less restricted in terms of time. So I can do more daytime, I can do weekdays. So I've been really blessed to have that opportunity.
To work on them.
So
Are you still writing screenplays as well?
I haven't written a screenplay in a little while, but I recently got an idea. And I want to write that one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many screenplays do you think you have?
I want to say about 3.
3 feature-length
3 feature-length
screenplays.
screenplays.
Now, for those in the audience who do not understand really what a feature-length, when we say feature-length, we mean more than 100 pages.
Yes.
You have 3
Yes.
screenplays of
Yes.
more than 100 pages.
Yes.
3 different stories.
3 different stories.
Is the process any different?
Yeah. So the process for that is it's a little different, and how I like to do screenplays is I'm kind of like a very eccentric person. So
Yes.
if some people will look at me and go, oh my gosh, she's so crazy. She might be a little crazy. Because I will literally be sitting down talking to myself. But I'm not talking to myself. What I'm really doing is
Figuring it out.
figuring out the characters.
Right.
So
So do you become them? Do you?
So you have to become them so you can bounce the dialogue off each other. It's the only way.
Interesting. That would be very interesting to observe you work through your characters.
It's the only way. So you have to be both sides of the story.
Interesting.
So you start with, the character of one dialogue and see how the character of the other dialogue will fit in with that. It sounds like a crazy process, but
That's
it
fine.
is the way that it has to go.
That's fine.
Because it's your story. So it's very difficult until you have something written down for you to table read with someone else.
Right.
So really, in
So
the
you're
process of writing, you're table reading with yourself.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
So you do actually sound crazy, bouncing male character dialogues
Yes.
with female character
And you
dialogues.
have to, and when the characters have accents, you have to do it in the accent.
So you do it in the accent as well?
I will do it in the accent if I have to.
So would you act then? Would you consider doing some screen time?
You know, I think that we actually, I have thought about it, and yeah, I would.
You would?
I would. I would. I think it would be. I keep saying, like, I would love to like write something and actually star in it. I keep saying that I would love to do that, and I think eventually I'd like to try that.
Eventually.
Eventually, yeah, I'd
Okay.
like to try that.
So you have screenplays, you have books.
Yes.
And you have plays as well?
So I wrote one play with some. So when I was at Norman Manley Law School, I wrote a play with two other colleagues of mine, Christopher and Claudine, and it was basically the theatrical production that's put on by the law school every year. So like the med school, they have Smoker.
Smoker, right.
We have something called Silk.
Silk, yes.
So I wrote Silk in, I think 2013 with Claudine and Chris. And it was performed at the Philip Sherlock Center for 2 nights.
Interesting.
And
So you wrote a Silk. Interesting.
I wrote a Silk. It was really fun. The process of getting there was less so fun, but the actual performing was quite fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And you were in it as well?
I was not in it
Okay.
at all because I had to. So for that, I had a lot of responsibilities. So I was the executive producer, I was the property master, I was ensuring technical, so all the sound effects and things,
Stage
that was
lighting.
me.
Mm-hmm.
All the different things, that was me. So I
So
had
you
a
were-
lot of responsibilities.
Oh, so you didn't
in the
have
background.
time to be in it?
No.
What was that story about?
So that story was about a lawyer who is on trial for murdering her lover in the office. Now, it turns out that it's not really her, but how we get to the end of the story is the fun part, which I can tell you.
Yes.
So it happens that the guy she's with in the office has a girlfriend. The girlfriend actually finds out about them. Her husband, meaning the lawyer's husband, also finds out, schemes up with the girlfriend, and the girlfriend shoots him in the office, plants the gun in the lawyer's safe,
Right.
and it's a whole thing.
So, okay.
And that's how we
Wrong
get
place, wrong
there.
time.
Yeah. And that's how we get there.
How long did it do? If you remember, how long it took you to write that play?
So that one was, I want to say that one was about 6 weeks initially. So that was, again, meeting with the other writers. That one took about 6 weeks initially because we had a pretty short time. So we got to school in September. The play is in December. We had to write it. We had to have auditions. We had to have everybody learn their lines. Then we had to do run-throughs. And we had the director who, was, all right, let's try and change something here in the script, try and change something there in the script. So some rewrites took place. And it was performed in December. And it was a process.
So that's your one and only
That's my one and
play.
only stage play. Yeah.
stage play.
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to leave this one for last, because it's your latest accomplishment,
Yes.
which is your line of wines.
Yes.
Please talk to me about your Boundbrook is the name of your
Yes.
line.
Boundbrook Estate.
Boundbrook Estate.
Yes.
Why Boundbrook?
So Boundbrook is so basically this wine is a collaboration between me and my mother. And Boundbrook is in Portland where she grew up. So it's kind of like a homage to my grandfather, who they all grew up with him in Boundbrook. And he's been very influential in, all of his children's lives. So she wanted to pay some tribute, and I was just like, all right, I like this. And so we worked on it together.
Okay. Okay. How long did it take you from conception to it being on your table now?
So the process was what I consider quite lengthy in terms of, when you look at the book writing process. So this process started in March of this year. And I recently got them in November of this year.
Wow.
So the process basically was coming up with what kind of wine do you want. Then we had to look at labels, and you have to, work with their creative team to decide on the labels, and you had to come up with a name. And then you had to look at, how do we want the bottles? There's the thing on the bottle, which is the foil around it. What color foil do you want? What color do you want the labels to be? So it was a whole process. And then we finally got to the point now of, let's get it out there. And then because of the whole shipping crisis that we've been having this year, it was almost nightmare to get it here.
Right.
But it's here, and I'm super grateful. It was a very good process and a little taxing, but enjoyable.
What are the different types? I see red, I see white.
Right. So in this sort of initial stage, we have 2 white varietals and 2 red varietals. The white varietals are a Sauvignon Blanc and a Chardonnay, and then the 2 red varietals are a Merlot and a Cabernet Sauvignon.
There's a pretty healthy wine industry here in
Yes.
Jamaica, and growing, I believe. More people are becoming interested in trying wines and getting into wine. For somebody who is trying to get into wines,
Right.
where do they start? What do they do?
Well, it really, there's no one process. So I can just take you through the process that I did.
Right.
So it is a wine that's from actually Chile. So it's not a Jamaican wine. It's a Jamaican brand, but not a Jamaican wine.
Right.
So it's from Chile. And how that actually came about was a cold email.
A cold email.
A cold email.
Okay.
Emails that people just send to people that they not sure if anybody will ever answer.
Right.
Luckily, I answered.
You answered.
So
Right.
actually, it was a cold email sent from a winery in Chile that was trying to get in the process of finding other markets. And so I, did a bit of research on the winery. And then I emailed and I was just like, what can you do for me? I would like to have my own line of wines. What can you do for me? And we went through the whole process, him explaining how they, get their grapes, how they do their process. And I was like, okay, this sounds kind of nice. I like this.
Yes.
So we then went through a process of figuring out what was best for us. And the winery does the labels, and the winery has the bottles, and the winery does the bottling. And they will, create different things for you if you want something different. They're a small winery, and they're very, they're very willing to work with what the client wants. So I loved that. And so I contacted this winery, asked him, what can you do for me? He said, what do you want? I told him. And we just went through the process of, figuring out varietals that we want, figuring out the bottling, the labels, the whole process. And they just do it all and then send it to you.
So the taste.
Yes.
How do you, so this is your brand, this is Boundbrook Estate.
Right.
This is the Boundbrook taste.
Yes.
How did you get to the Boundbrook taste?
So it's a process of trying to figure out what you like. So they will send you tasting notes. So you figure out, do you want something a little spicier? Do you want something that, the smell of it, is it aroma of berries? berries, the aroma of, vanilla. What do you want? A little black pepper, a little white pepper. What is the flavor that you're looking for?
Right.
And obviously, in the different varietals, there is a certain flavor profile that you want from that varietal, or, technically it's something else. And also it's a matter of the grapes that you use, which gets you to that kind of thing. So once you kind of step with them, you kind of understand what you are looking for. Then you just work with them to get the flavor right. They are also willing to do something a little special for you. So if you want something a little sweeter, they will work with you in getting that formula right. If you want something drier, they'll work with you in getting that formula right. If you want a sweet red, they can work with you. If they want, a white, a sweet white, they can work with you on that. So I love the fact that the winery was kind of very like, let's get these people what they want.
Right. It's tailored for you.
Yeah.
So earlier we were having a little discussion, and I was asking, I noticed the types of wine that Boundbrook has so far.
Yes.
And I was asking about a Moscato.
Yes.
Moscato is popular in Jamaica as well.
It is.
So do you like Moscato?
I do not like Moscato. I'm sorry. No, it's. I think Moscato is a little too sweet. It's not for my palate. But I do appreciate that a lot of people like it, and I like to think of Moscato as a non-wine drinker's wine.
Okay.
Because it's very close to, except for the alcohol content, a kind of juicy flavor, like
Say light.
a juice flavor.
Right.
I've had different friends tell me, I like Moscato because it tastes like juice.
Right.
And we get into a whole argument about how your wine should not taste like juice. If you wanted juice, go and drink juice. So I don't particularly like Moscato, but I do understand that people like it. And so it is something that we are looking into for the next round, is to try to expand the varietals, because there are also some other varietals that I like that I would like to have, like Malbec. I would like to have a Malbec. So we'll work with them on getting a Malbec. I know people like Shiraz. We'd like to get some Shiraz. And maybe a sweet red and a sweet white that's maybe not a Moscato, but will, appease the people who like something a little sweeter.
So you will keep expanding on the
Yes.
Boundbrook
Yes.
taste.
Yes.
The Boundbrook line. So
Yes.
it's not just this 4 that you're seeing right now. You're gonna have more.
Yes.
But they are all available now for sale.
They are all available now for sale. You can get them currently at NK Wholesale, which is at 94C Old Hope Road. They're all there for you to go and get a case, go and get a bottle.
Okay. So what's next for you, Lisa?
So what I'm currently working on is, now that I've gotten the wines, I will work on expanding the wines, but also I'm working on a couple new books.
More books.
More books.
So have you started to work on them, or they're still in like the conceptual phase?
So there are 3 books that have already been written. So there is the 3rd book in the Road series, which I'm expecting to get out next year. And there are 2 other ones. One is another historic fiction set in Port Royal. Happens around the time of the 1692 earthquake. So it's events leading up to that and events after that, which I love history. So, and I love history that has to do with natural disasters. So that one for me was particularly interesting to write, seeing as how we're from Jamaica. I've been to Port Royal several times.
Right.
I've been on the Port Royal Museum tour more times than maybe anybody has been on it.
Right.
Because anytime anybody comes here, I take them on that tour because I just think it's absolutely fascinating.
Right.
So it's set there, and it's kind of events leading up to events after. So that one is done. That one is done. That one is edited. That one is ready. to go. I actually got the cover art for that about 2 days ago,
Interesting.
which I have finalized. So that one will be ready to go shortly. And I'm very excited about that. And then I branched off again a little bit on the other one that I'll tell you about now, which is a YA novel, young adult novel. And it's set in kind of like I wouldn't call it dystopian, but it's set in kind of like a society where we're not really sure the timeline of this society. We're not really sure what's happening with the people in this society. There's a supreme leader in this society. He runs his society in a particular way, and there is no, faction which is saying, we don't really like the way you're running this place.
Oh, so there's pushback.
So there's pushback, but he's a very, decisive leader. So obviously, we're gonna get into some clashes, and it's a little bit a different vibe. So this one has, more scenes of like war, more scenes of like different things. It's a little bit interesting, the training that goes into the process. So this one is called the Obsidian.
Obsidian.
The Obsidian, which is essentially a group of elite secret police. And they are basically recruited for the purpose of quelling what's happening so that everything goes back to status quo, even though the status quo is not that great.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's where we are now. So we'll go through the training process, get through the process of, the main character thinking, maybe things aren't really as great as everybody keeps telling us.
Yes.
So she's in a sort of internal conflict, and we get to the bit at the end where there's a revolt.
So, when you said she, it just popped up in my head. Are most of your main characters women?
Yes.
Are all of them women?
Most of the main characters, or they're more female driven. So the Time Trapped Captive, female driven. The romance novels, female driven. This new one is female driven as well, and the book about Port Royal is also female driven.
You many years ago you sent me a screenplay around the whole Port Royal. Is it that same story that you've now changed into a novel?
Yes. So that is what I did.
Okay. Because I remember you sent me a screenplay.
Yeah, I'm glad you remember. Yeah, no,
I don't forget these things.
That is exactly what I did. So I took that screenplay and turned it into a novel.
Okay.
Because the idea had always been there. It was just to sort of figure out what form I wanted it in. And it started out as a screenplay, and then, now it took a little bit more form as a novel, which I'm hoping I will then readapt into the screenplay.
Right.
So that we can get something done there.
Yes. Okay. Because that's what I was about to ask you. Because then, it starts as a screenplay, you transition to a novel, and then you transition back to a screenplay.
Yeah.
So there was also, I think there was another screenplay that you sent me for a series.
Yes.
That's just at the back of your computer right now.
Yeah, so that one's at the back of my computer. And I recently wrote a new series. I write as an outlet. So this is a particularly interesting story to me because I was watching something on Netflix and I thought, you know what, it was kind of an interesting story. So the new series that I've written that I don't know what I'm going to do with yet, is essentially about, and it's set in London because I spent some time there, and I love there, and I love to see Jamaicans in London and how they interact, because they're just so into Jamaican culture.
In London?
In London. Even if they're like London born, but of Jamaican parentage or other heritage. But they're just so super into the culture.
Yes.
That I love that. So it's basically about a girl who is there, and she meets this guy, and he's white, and she's trying to integrate him into her very Jamaican family.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so it's meant to be a comedy.
Right.
Because obviously, the situation there is going to be a bit
Right.
funny. It's going to be a bit tricky to
Right.
figure out the situation there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote the pilot recently, and it's meant to just kind of like follow them and touch on like different topics.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in the first sort of episode, it's, she's meeting her parents.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I mentioned earlier, in Jamaica, if you're not a lawyer, if you're not a doctor, your parents don't really think you have a job.
Right.
So in this case, her boyfriend is a photographer. And so at the dinner, they meet over some dinner. And then, he tells them what he does. And so her father is just like, yes, but what do you do?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what is your job? Like,
Yes.
yes, you're saying that you're a photographer, but what do you do?
Right.
And,
Yes.
he's trying to, explain to them, this is my job. So it's kind of like a point of looking at the little disconnects between different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Jamaican culture with a culture of somebody who's properly English.
Right.
So, so I wrote the pilot for that, and I have some ideas of where I want the episodes to go in terms of looking at the different disconnects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're not into the darker side of storytelling, like the horror and the thrillers.
So no, I don't like a horror. I'm not gonna lie. I watched was it Freddy Krueger
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger. I don't think I've gotten over it. Yeah, no, it. So I'm not a fan of horror. So I don't really like the darker side. I mean, I wouldn't mind writing like a psychological thriller, which
Okay.
is kind of like a deep mind game kind of situation, but not a huge fan of horror.
Like Inception.
I don't think I understand Inception still. So I don't know if I'm gonna get there.
Right.
But if I ever come up with something like that and people are thoroughly confused but they still love it, I wouldn't mind.
Okay. All right. So you said we're going to learn a little bit more about your wines, and we'll get to actually taste it.
Yes.
So let's go do that.
Okay. So we have the 4 varietals here. They're kind of in order of how you would taste them. So we have a Sauvignon Blanc, which is a little bit of a lighter white. And if you look at it, the fun thing about this bottle is that it has the tasting notes actually at the back. So, what should you expect from the wine? It's going to be clean and bright with pale green tones. What can you expect from the smell? Tropical fruit. What can you expect from the taste? It's going to be balanced with fresh acidity, light and crisp. So all of the bottles have that same kind of note at the back, so you know exactly what you're getting. So you're not going to look at it and say, this wine is too spicy. This wine literally says black and white pepper. So this one's going to be a little bit more spicy. So if you don't want that, you don't get this one. And this one tells you the kind of flavors that you should be looking for, which is strawberry. It's very velvety tannins, and tannins is basically that kind of taste that's left in the back of your throat after. Mm-hmm. So this one has a lot of that, so you will know not to expect something that's too light. It's going to have velvety tannins, and it's going to it says that it has a long lasting aftertaste, so you know to expect that kind of long flavor after. And you can tell me which one you want to try. You can try all of them if you want, but it would go in this order. So
We're trying all of them.
You're trying all of them.
Yes.
That's right. So we're going in the order of the Sauvignon Blanc and the Chardonnay, followed by the Merlot, and then the Cabernet Sauvignon.
So we just did a taste test of Boundbrook Estate's current line of wines. Please, I am not usually a red wine drinker. I will pull for the whites first, but the reds, very smooth. So if you're new to this whole wine thing, or you want to learn more about wines, check out Boundbrook Estate. Boundbrook Estate, Jamaican brand of wine, please, it's good, it's worth it. So Lisa,
Yes.
so you have your wine. So what's happening with your wine now? What's the next thing? You're launching it.
Yes, so the next step is to do, so it's available for sale, but we're going to do a more public launch. So there's a private launch and a public launch, and the private launch is pretty soon, and then the public launch will be open to everyone and will be at NK Wholesale, who is the distributor of the wine, and that will be on December 4. And members of the public can come along, have some food, drink some wine. It will be on a Saturday, so that's a very good day from about noon until a little bit into the afternoon. So you can come by, sample, buy a bottle, have some food, and just enjoy yourself.
Where can we find all of your works, your books?
So all of my books are currently on Amazon. You can look for me under my pen name, which is Elizabeth Churchill, and that will give you the full catalog of things that I have available.
Well, this has been another episode of Storytelling in the Tropics. Thank you, my guest, Lisa Rhooms.
Thank you for having me.
Very multifaceted. She is infinite. And I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me today.
No problem.
And we will be back for the updates.
I hope so.
For the new things that
Yeah.
are happening in your life, we will be back. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Until next time, viewers and listeners, peace, love, unity all the while. And go with the good spirit. Blessings.